Listening to the rain.
Different formats. Two, I don't know what you call them, sun windows, they're just little cutout windows in my living room, like where the TV is. And I can see the neighbor's roof, and I can see the rain.
Is there a reason we can't get
Frank and John are out in the hallways, he's here, but Frank called him out.
Okay, let's go ahead. I apologize. I guess I wasn't watching the clock. We're a couple minutes late. Everybody realize that except for me, I guess. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
If you would, please silence your cell phones, and we'll go ahead and call the school board workshop for the facilities update for Tuesday, September 21st to order. And Mr. Clinch, I will.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is our planning services update, where we will be updating you on 3 items: the 5-year Ed Plant survey, a real estate update, and our 5-year work plan. So the 5-year work plan is not something that we typically cover at a facilities workshop. However, we've elected to do this today to walk you through. You know, the first time I saw a 5-year work plan, I was a little intimidated. It's lots of information. However, this is not new information. It's gathered from multiple sources, including the approved project school district budget. So we're going to walk through that with you and hopefully be able to answer any questions you might have. So without further ado, we're going to start with our first section, which is the 5-year Ed Plant survey. And I'll make introductions. My Director of Planning Services, Ms. Rhonda Blake, and our Senior Facility Manager of Planning, Mr. Jason Lindsay. Jason, you want to take it away?
I'll take it away. Good afternoon, board members. First thing we're going to talk about, as Mr. Clinch spoke about, was the 5-year educational plan survey. First, I'd like to introduce, we have a consultant helping us out with this project, and that is Clemens Rutherford and Associates Architects. And with us tonight, we have Ms. Benita Willis, who's working closely with us to complete the educational plan survey. First thing I'd like to talk about is what we do the educational plant survey for. And per Florida Statute 1013, the educational plant survey is a systematic study to present educational ancillary plans and determination of future needs to provide an appropriate educational program and service for each student based on the projected capital outlay FTE approved by the Department of Education. Next slide, we'd like to go through a little bit of history. Since 1974, regular changes have been made to statutory provisions in Florida Constitution regarding the educational facilities. These changes had an effect on the amount of state funds PICO CODS received for construction of educational facilities. As a result, the new schools and ancillary facility funds come from local revenue sources, which do not require the approval of school district's educational plan survey per Florida statute. Purpose of the educational plant survey. Educational plant surveys are valid for 5 full years and expire on June 30th of the 5th full year from the beginning date of the survey. The purpose of the educational plant survey is to aid in formulating plans for housing, educational activities of students and staff of the schools district for the next several years. And the survey must consider a local comprehensive plan and its forecasted strategy. The key to remember is an educational plant survey is based off of COPTI numbers, not warm body numbers. COPTI student enrollment is full-time students in school. Those do not include full-time generated proportionate fraction FTE. If a student is in class for half the day, goes to work program, goes to Valencia, we get half credit for that student. It also does not include traditional charter school students, hospital homebound students, McKay students, Department of Juvenile Justice students, Florida virtual school students are not included in our COPTI numbers. This is why traditionally you'll see that our enrollment numbers are higher than our actual COPTI numbers. Next slide is the survey requirements. One of the requirements of the survey is the Department of Education's 5% fish validation. This is where members of the Department of Education come down and visit our facilities and do a 5% validation. This is scheduled to happen October 18th to the 22nd. 2 members of DOE will come down and walk 5% of our facilities, measure, calculate, make sure we're reporting the correct information. I lost my place. If the department review finds data that is reported by a district at less than 95% accurate, the school district has one year from the time of notification to correct any discrepancies. Next is the facilities list. Myself have been working with the assistant superintendents for middle, high school, and elementary to go through the facilities list. Now, the facilities list is your pretty much your prototype school that you would build if you had state funds. Now, what that says is that our middle schools are 1,408 students, our combination schools are 1,415 student stations, our elementary schools are 948, and our high schools are 2,522 student stations. At this time, we do not see making any changes to the amount of student stations per our facilities lists. And those will be coming back to the school board for approval. They have to be approved before the education plan survey is approved in next June. Next, we have the DBE 768 form. This is required by the Office of Workforce and Economic Development to document the needs of the educational, career, and adult education programs and the continuation of existing programs. Currently, I'm working with the CTE department for filling out this form, and this also has to be approved by DOE prior to the educational plan survey being approved. Next is facility recommendations. This can be anything from a removal addition of portables, changes to current facilities, and new facilities for the use of state funds. Capital outlay classifications. Educational plans are identified by recommended type of facility for the capital outlay expenditures. You have C1, which is continuing to use it as an educational facilities on so on and so forth. District-wide recommendations are recommendations that are made on a district-wide basis. They include schools and facilities where applicable. Corrections can be made based off of the district recommendations for health and safety as identified on the safety reports. ADA corrections, replacement of equipment, roofs, addition of storage, custodial space, parking improvements, land purchases for future use, and technology retrofits. Now, I mentioned several times that anything in the educational plan survey has to be approved if you plan on using state funds to build that facility. Per Florida Statute 101331A, it allows us to use other fund sources, such as local capital outlay improvement funds consisting of funds that come from and are part of the district's operating budget, such as taxpayer-approved bond referendums, private gifts or donations, district school levy tax pursuant to Florida Statute 101171-2, 1/2 cent sales tax revenues, 1/6 local governmental surtax, and impact fees, which is a majority, if not all, of where our growth construction money comes from. The plan must be based on a careful study of all available data regarding the current status of educational and ancillary facilities in relation to the capital outlay full-time equivalency, student membership, and the projected changes to COFT student membership. The intent is to encourage a thoughtful, orderly development of a program for providing educational and ancillary plans to adequately house the educational and academic support activities of the district. If there's any questions at this time, I'll be happy to answer. I know it's a lot to take in. We will bring the actual report back to you to review prior to moving forward for approval.
Any questions? Good job. Ask for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lindsay. We'll move on to our next item. I'll ask our next speaker to join us at the table. Bishop Beal and Duncan is our consultant for real estate, and Miss Jill Rose will join us at the table.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the time today. I know feels like we kind of work in a vacuum, and this is wonderful to be able to update you on what we're doing day to day. And with that, I want to say though, obviously, transactions are fluid in nature, and Julia, you know this. So they're always changing. And so as we update you today, there's some differences you're gonna see in your packet that you got a few weeks ago, because lots of things have changed since then. So I wanna start off with, when we work, we have bi-weekly phone calls, the team does. And we have our agenda broken out into dispositions, then acquisitions, and then any other activities that we're working on. So we approached it this way in this report. So let's start off with our dispositions. We were hired to sell 2 assets the school board had, excess assets. One was the Lakeview property, which is up by off of Columbia. And we were under contract on that property with Surrey Homes a while back, and we ran into an issue with an easement that has since been worked out. And the positive thing is that since that time with Surrey Homes, and they decided to terminate, the price has gone up. So we are now actually, I think tomorrow, we're targeting a buyer executed contract with Starlight Homes, which is a division of Ashton Woods. And the price has increased, and I'm doing this math in my head, but it's probably between 25 and 30% from when we were under contract with Surrey Homes. So we'll be going under contract on that 25 acres for $4.2 million. Same amount of units being built as what Surrey had proposed. So nothing really changes on the project other than we're getting a little bit more value because of the time that lapsed in between. And we're anticipating a closing of that deal. They do have to go through a comp plan change and a rezone through the city of St. Cloud, which is going to take some time, although they've already started engaging. But we're anticipating a closing of February of 23, assuming we can get the contract executed tomorrow into the right hands by the 28th, in front of you guys by the
19th.
Which one?
October 19th.
By October 19th, executed a week later, and then we'll go into the due diligence period.
Where is it located?
Say that again?
Where exactly is it located?
So this property is an excess property to, is that Columbia?
Lakeview
Behind
Elementary
Lakeview
School.
Elementary.
Lakeview Elementary School.
Sorry,
Over at
Lakeview
St. Cloud,
Elementary.
yes?
Off of Columbia and Fourth.
Fifth Street.
It's hidden back there, you'd have to look for it. I mean, you don't see it real from the street, from
Yeah.
the road.
Lakeview's 40 acres, and the elementary school is on basically 15 acres. And we've been in possession of the other 25
Is it on the
for,
back side of the school?
It is.
Yes.
Correct.
Mhm.
And a portion off to the side of the school, which serves
All
as
to the
the,
east, yeah.
as the easement.
Yeah, and then there's an access easement, actually, it's not an easement, we're transferring land, ownership, to the north of the school, that the city had already approved in the previous contract as an acceptable entrance to this neighborhood, so that we keep the cars off Fifth Street and have them access through Columbia. So that, any other questions on that one?
Yeah, I see it now. On the Google Maps, yeah, on the north side.
It's a nice 25, it's a nice square, great dimension.
How many homes are gonna be put on?
175 is what we limited them to,
Which means how many students to us?
townhomes.
Do you know?
We don't handle that portion of it,
About a half per.
yeah.
I was gonna say it's,
Now, do we still collect the impact fee from it? So we're
Yes.
getting the full price, we're not negotiating impact fee
we
credit.
still get full
So
price
once
of
they
impact fee.
develop, they still pay us.
Yes.
So we kind of get the money back to a certain degree.
And that school has the, that school has the capacity for the additional homes?
At this time, they do, yes.
I'm good.
All right, so the second disposition project was called Covington, and that we call the Pine Tree Drive property. And that was a 18 and change, 19-acre property that was bifurcated by Pine Tree Drive, about 4+ acres to the north, the remaining 14 to the south. And we listed that property around the same time as Lakeview. And the same thing has transpired with the market. So there was some interest and we got some offers and they ranged from $1 million for the 18 acres. And then I think our highest offer was around 1.45 for the 18 acres. And you purchased the property for 1.9. That was your basis, so we weren't interested in losing money. So we continued to market the property. We worked with Dr. Pace and the board on potential allowable uses or being allowed to use the land use to its fullest capacity. And we went back out to market. We now have 8 offers ranging from our lowest offer is 1.75. And as it stands today, our highest offer is 2.8. So we are in the process of countering all of those offers. And then what we will do is we will underwrite, we'll shortlist those, underwrite those buyers, because ultimately we want to close. We don't just want to go under contract. And then choose a horse, and that'll probably happen in the next, 2 weeks to a month, I would say. And offers have ranged from national developers like D.R. Horton to regional developers like ResiBuild and Live Stellar to local like Elevation. So we've gotten the gamut. We're pretty pleased. We don't think that these offers are out of market, and obviously an appraisal will guide us through that. But based upon what we're seeing in other projects and other markets, I think we're okay. Most of these developers are looking to take full advantage of the land use in the city of St. Cloud, which is 8 units an acre. So essentially that's what
That
we're looking at.
LDR, well, it would be, I mean, it's on both sides, even the northern,
So,
I mean, is there any mixed use or commercial on that northern section?
Well, at this point, no. At some point in time, maybe.
Because what can they do with it?
Well,
What can they
so
do
the
with that
problem,
northern section?
right. So there's 2 other property owners to the north, Rosin and Whaley. And actually, someone does have the Rosin property under contract. We did lose a contract. Ashton Woods pulled out because they can't buy that property. So they were looking to assemble about 9 acres on the north to make use of that 4. My personal opinion, the 4 is gonna sit at the point that maybe it matures enough to be some ancillary commercial, like a daycare, maybe a dentist, nothing heavy traffic. So we'll see how that happens. They can't build much on 4 with residential, so.
And it's somewhat irregularly shaped
It
as well.
is, correct. And, or, the person who's buying Rosin or Whaley might end up buying that 4 from the buyer.
Would it be in our best interest just to sell the southern section and just retain ownership of that one? And in case it does mature, it does change, that land use does
Yeah,
change?
The current direction is to try to sell them together for fear that we would get left with the north, which is almost like a sawtooth that goes up and down.
Yeah.
So it's more favorable to the people around us than for us to try to take over the people. So we've given them direction that we want the 2 pieces to go together.
And there might be potential value for that smaller piece of property with the larger. There is a chance that the retention could be piped over to that smaller parcel. So another reason why we thought we should keep them together.
I thought this was the one that we were gonna negotiate with the city of St. Cloud to purchase
That
for
was that
whatever.
one.
And then they pulled out.
Yeah, they've done it twice.
Oh,
They've checked into it and both times they've pulled back.
Which actually worked in our favor because the values got higher as that time went on.
right. Yeah, because I was like, my memory serving me correct. I remember that they said yes, and then I guess I don't know what their intention was to do with it, but I know that at one point they said they were interested.
One time they were looking for a public works facility, and the other time I think they were trying to help OUC find a facility. Then once they went to their board and had all their one-on-ones, they got back with us and said they didn't want to pursue.
Right, and again, same question then, what about the exact location so I can get a feel, because I like looking at it on Google Maps.
It's right next to the
You're right.
church, between the church and Covington Estates.
Okay, yes, we're at Canoe Creek Church, right?
Yes.
So just to the west of it, right?
Yes,
Right, to the west, yeah.
and then of course across the street. It is more like at an angle, not even directly across the street, right? It's kind of slant.
Yeah. And that's where the commercial, where my hesitation comes, because it's at that line where it kind of drops off to be more rural and larger lots, and so, you know, that's not changing for a very long
Pushing
time.
more of the mixed use, they're looking to infill those little commercial segments, so that's why I thought maybe.
Cause, yeah, that's what I was saying, I kind of agree with Mr. Bass, because I'm kind of familiar with that area, and plus they're developing all around it too, they just paved it. I'm just hesitant to put a couple more houses on there, you know, here we are, so I don't want to be the contributor to that, you know what I mean,
Okay.
especially if we're not in a hurry.
What I can offer to that is when we began, we did start with commercial. We looked at doctors, business professional, and it continued just to sit
We
and
didn't get
sit.
any.
And then we kind of just sat on it for a year because we weren't getting what we were looking for. And we were really adamant, no multifamily. So by waiting out that year, now it's like we put it back out at just the right time because now we have 8 offers and we're staying more into this single-family townhome with a max.
So the 8 units an acre will, the interested parties range from townhome developers down to single-family for rent developers, which is more of a villa-type concept, single-story, detached. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that new design, which is popping up all over the country.
They're not fans of it in St. Cloud.
Yeah, I don't, so we will figure out how the city feels about this. No one has approached the city yet, other than to confirm land use and zoning.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because
I'm
my
talking
thing,
about the people, not really the,
not the
Commission.
jurisdiction, yeah,
or the council.
yeah.
yeah, because I know they're talking about, you know, maybe widening Canoe Creek Road, but right now they haven't. So I just hate contributing to that. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it's not like we're hurting to hurry up and get those funds right away. I'm just one board member, I'm with the rest of it, because I know, because I'm looking at the map and I remember exactly where that is. And those are some high-end properties, you know, and the new Pine Tree Estates is almost done. I can almost see some kind of commercial use coming in later. And I'm just not in a hurry to just keep, we're already dumping more houses on Lakeview, or just like, I just can see that having value later, you know, so I'm just not excited about putting a couple more houses out there. And dumping
My
them.
only hesitation, again, from a commercial perspective, is that it's right on the fringe of the low density. And I don't think there's anyone that's gonna go assemble, you know, those that have to be, I would assume a minimum of 1 acre. There's probably a bunch of 5-acre lots out there.
That area.
Yeah, so I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon, and so that's gonna limit our exposure and traffic of potential for commercial. But like I said, maybe quasi-commercial, maybe a daycare, maybe a dentist, but that, you're only talking 2 or 3 acres, not 18. I just have a feeling the south piece will sit for a long time if it's not residential.
The north piece, the south piece or the north piece?
The south, that's what I'm saying, if the north piece, I don't think any home builder's gonna put houses on there.
Right.
Unless they can assemble other pieces to make it make sense. The south piece, it's really the highest and best use.
Because what we're kind of hearing from Mr. Melendez is he's not quite comfortable knowing that we're going to put more residential units onto 18 acres, bringing in more traffic in that area, correct?
Yes,
That's what I want, okay.
yeah,
So
that's
that's
what I'm
why
getting,
Jill's
that's what I'm
saying
getting at.
her fear is, though, it'll sit, because something commercial for 18 acres is not in the future, so they'd look at assemblages to try to consume the 18 acres. So she's thinking maybe a couple of small commercials, but we would get stuck with the balance.
You would definitely get stuck with the south piece.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just a little confused on something, because you've mentioned a couple times that you're pretty confident that that north piece is gonna sit. Even if we sell it, they're not gonna put houses there,
I think
unless they assemble.
I
unless they
think
do some
that's what's gonna
assembly.
happen. I think ultimately,
north
whoever
piece.
buys the other properties is gonna either buy this one from the new buyer that if we decide to contract with, buys, they're gonna purchase that from the new buyer. The new buyer is only buying the north piece because we're forcing them to, not for any other reason. Any of these buyers would love to leave the north piece vacant and not buy it. Because it does nothing for them.
Right.
So that's why Ashton Woods walked away when they found out they couldn't buy the piece adjacent. So, that's kind of my feeling. I think ultimately that's how it will work out, is that whoever buys Rosin and Whaley will buy this 4 acres from whoever buys the total 18.
I still say, I'm still thinking if we sold the southern half, all of the offers that you have on the table would be more than willing to buy just the southern half. And then
Correct.
And what was wrong with us retaining that
And just waiting.
leveraging it a little bit, and then, I mean, if somebody wants to assemble it, they can come to us later on. They may pay us a little bit more than they may be able to net more going that route than selling
I don't
it one
disagree.
piece.
That's really a decision, the board, you guys
I'm
have to make.
fishing,
And
I'm just speculating.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but
We would just need new direction that we can separate and sell the south without the north. Our current direction, since we've been in this process, was it needed to go as a total package, not to separate it for fear,
But we'd be
and-
stuck with the north.
yes, and that the south would bring in less than the whole together, but now the prices are going up, so we're in a little better position. So we were afraid of selling the south for less than we bought it all for, and then we could never sell the north to make the profit. But now the market's a little better, so it sounds like we're in a little different position, but we would need direction that we can separate and just sell the south and hold on to the north if that's the direction of the board.
Julius, what you think?
I feel like talking to you folks. I mean, I'm in the space, man, I just don't, because it's not so pressing. We're selling the other one, we're getting our money back from that. I'm not in a real rush. You know what I mean? It's not like we're desperate, and I hate to say that publicly, that we don't need the money right away, because this is a 5-year capital plan. We've already paid for it. We've waited before, and I think we have the luxury of waiting because we do have the disposition of the Lakeview for $4 million. So we already have $4 million coming into the district to use for whatever we need. I don't see a real rush on getting rid of Pine Tree right away. Especially just to sell it to another developer and put more houses on there and things like that. So that's just my gut feeling. Lakeview, that is there, because Lakeview is right behind the school. It's in a residential area. You're not gonna put commercial on there because the way it is. But this one's next to a church. It does lend itself a little bit more. Where Pine Tree meets is where the Canoe Creeks intersect, and they have that shopping center, and they're building out there. Once that's built out, then where else they're gonna go? So sometimes it's worth it to have a little bit of discipline and wait. Now, if we weren't in a position where we absolutely needed the money to flip, to get something else, then that's a different story. But since I think that we have the luxury of waiting, I think it would be worth it to do that, especially once they expand Canoe Creek Road, because when I spoke with the city council, they were talking about that is in the pike. And I didn't say to the council, I spoke to the city manager, Mr. Sturgeon, and he says there are future plans to get that expanded. So once that's expanded, then I'd be more than happy to do that. And then we can entertain it then, you know what I mean? So I'm just,
Help me understand, I'm sorry, Julius,
No,
were
it's
you
okay,
all
I'm
set?
finished.
Thank you, I apologize. Help me understand timeline wise, so I know with the Lakeview property, we were pretty confident that by February, this deal could be settled.
2023.
Of
2023.
So they get a year's worth of due diligence,
Yeah.
to work through what's taking so long, and that is the comp plan amendment. It has to go up, it has to be heard twice, it has to go up to the state twice and back down. So they need a full year to get that property through all their due diligence.
I understand. Now, what about for the next property? Is there, do we have a timeline? Because it sounds
Yeah.
like we have several offers at the moment, correct?
8.
8 offers.
We do. Our counteroffer was a 90-day due diligence and then a 180-day approval period, and then they have to close. So it's a lot faster than Lakeview because land use is already in place. So
Okay,
it's just a rezone.
I understand. So basically,
You would
if
get the
it's-
funds from Pine Tree before Lakeview.
Yes.
Okay, understood.
In about 9 months.
And there's less risk because it already has land use in place.
I guess really what I wanted to know wasn't so much what I really wanted to know is, because it sounds like at least one, maybe two board members may have some additional questions and hesitations about it. I don't necessarily have those questions, however, I wouldn't mind, I guess waiting if that's where the board wants to go. But I'm also wondering, what would that do to the timeline of this particular project? What is it, what are the externalities, I guess if I'm asking the question, what are the externalities of going in a different direction is really what I wanna know.
I'd say the key thing would be, does the market turn or
Right.
so it's work that we had the delays that we had and we waited a bit, so the price went up. But as we always say, tomorrow the market could take us in another direction. Because when we started this process, we couldn't even get people to offer what we paid for it. So we just kept denying and saying, no, thank you, no, thank you. Like we had somebody offer us $1 million for it, we're like, next. So it's kind of work that we've waited it out. So at the same time, you could wait something out and it'll go against. So the work, I don't wanna say the worst thing, we could just end up retaining the property if the prices start going down and we wait till the prices go back up to put it back on the market. But
Understood.
this is the best turnout we've had since we've been at this, to have 8 offers on the table.
And I don't think the use, from a highest and best use perspective, I don't think that's ever gonna change. So I don't think in 5 years that it'll automatically magically be commercial for 18 acres. It just doesn't, I don't see it. Like I said, maybe an acre here, an acre there to give some services to the residents around it. But I can't see them welcoming a gas station with open arms or a self-storage facility with I just don't see it. I feel like the rural nature of the eastern side of this submarket, that's a tough battle.
What are the maintenance costs for the property right now? So I'm trying to kind of gauge
We're
what's
mowing
the.
it.
Say what?
Maintenance.
Once a month.
Yeah.
How much? Just mow it
Mow it
once a
once a
month?
month.
That's it? Okay.
If the rain were difficult, we might have to mow it twice, but we do maintain it.
The one recommendation I could make would be, we could go check with the city to see if they would entertain commercial zoning. And then we could come back to you at the next board meeting, and if the city says we're never going to entertain commercial zoning there, it kind of answers that question for us.
Yeah, I agree, because
We would have to go through zoning with them, and if they never want commercial there because the church is on one side and Covington Estates is on the other, then that tells us we have to stick with residential. I mean, I could put that call out to them and see if I could have an answer by the next board meeting.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because it's not really a big rush, because again, I was under the impression that St. Cloud wanted it, they had it, and I was excited to even give them a discount, because, government agencies, we just, it's a courtesy to work together with them. All of a sudden it's changing, and I'm like, I don't wanna
Yeah, no, they
rush to a
definitely
quick
stepped away.
decision.
Rodney,
We
what
could
is the
put that
future
on
land
as
use
an
on that?
informational
I'm
item.
sorry, what?
I'm sorry, I don't know if, go ahead.
No, we could put that on as an informational item for the 10-5 board meeting. That would be okay.
It's kind of like what Ms. Castillo always says, when the first time we see something, especially something new, I hate to vote on it right away without really doing the due diligence and asking out and stuff like that, so.
Okay, you said 8 dwelling units per acre, but is that, on LDR, it's 3 to 8, but then from medium density, it's 8 to 18, so what, I have to check
It's
what's.
3 to 8.
It's 3 to 8
Yeah.
for there, okay.
Yeah, and we were just, again, there was a price we had to hit, a price expectation to make back the basis plus. And that's kind of where, and, I can't do 60 homes and they can't
But I
put
got a quick
2.8
question, it
million.
kind of runs parallel to this one. You mentioned earlier about those new developments that are the rental developments where the developer retains.
Build for rent, yeah.
build. What are the average sizes of those units?
So there's like 750 square feet up to, maybe 1,200 square feet.
Oh, so they're tiny, almost like a tiny house.
They're
Apartment size,
yeah, they're for,
apartment size.
Apartment size,
families
single
and
story, though.
non-families who
Single
wanna
story
live in a
yard.
home, but are forced to rent.
Okay.
They have a backyard.
We got a good bit to get through here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we'll talk about that after. All right, perfect. So the next acquisition is the Knightsbridge property, which everyone has seen. We were caught up in a legislation with some property rights elements that needed to be added to everyone's comprehensive plans, but now we've gotten the vote more on our way, and we are expecting the closing of that property March 30th. And that was an acquisition for a K-8 on Point Siena Boulevard.
So this is one of the items that's seen a lot of change since we put the presentation together. And due to things moving forward now with the city of Kissimmee, we've been able to get about 60 days off of the schedule since we put it together.
The next acquisition is the Avenue A Transportation West project that we are in our due diligence period right now that expires October 31st. Most of the due diligence items have been completed, except for, we've got a wetland determination pending, the traffic analysis is pending. We're working with South Florida Water Management District, and we're trying to secure our access. So we're furiously working through that transaction. Estimated closing per the contract is November 19th. That may be pushed 30 to 60 days, dependent upon if we can secure the access or not.
Okay. Mark, if we do close that, even with the extension, I thought we were having issues with the Transportation West in terms of construction and building. What's
Yes, sir, we have currently our west side, it's something that we've been trying to do for the last 4 years. We've pursued several different properties. We believe that we're close on this one, but this side is desperately needed.
No, I knew that. I going by our conversation we had, I thought we were having like a timeline issue with that one.
So the critical path with the design is the permitting. And that's been running more like 14 months. This is a site that would involve South Florida and Army Corps permitting.
Okay, that's.
In years past, we could pretty much count on 12 months, but those timelines have significantly extended. There's a lot of projects that have stacked up with the Water Management District and the Corps. So that is the driver, that 14-month for design. It wouldn't take 14 months for the actual design, but the permitting is that 14 months before we could go to construction documents.
Would it be any quicker? Okay, we've got, Board, I wanted to ask you something. I was gonna bring it up at the regular meeting, but I can take a few minutes now. We need 2 transportation sites, west and east. We've already purchased the land at Nova Road. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're gonna build one and let that be the prototype for the other.
Correct.
Could we build the one on the east side quicker than we could on the west side?
Well, certainly, we, currently own the property, so we could put it into design just as soon as we can get an
So
RFQ.
I
for
personally
design
would
out
like
on
to
the
see
street.
this one's come out of the ground first, only because when you look at the chain of events, we're going to take the traffic off of Michigan Avenue and we'll put it out on, take the school bus traffic and put it at Nova Road, and then we'll take the maintenance on that 2-acre parcel that's on 10th
10th of
and move it
Virginia.
over, and
over
then
to
we
the
can sell
existing-
that. So we'll have additional income from that quicker than waiting for permitting and I just think it would be, the timeline would be easier and quicker if we started on this one first and let that be the prototype for the west side.
Okay. Is there a reason y'all,
Can we,
Our direction has always been to prioritize transportation west, but if the new direction is to shift to east, certainly we can do that.
what was the prioritization due to need?
Due to need, yes, there is more need, but
So does that,
need on the east is quickly
Well,
increasing.
Mr. Chairman, could
I'm
I
not sure it
just-
slows you down if you do the one on the east, because you've got the, everything else, the South Florida and everything else. Mr. Kreppenberger?
Could we check with transportation before you all sign off on it? Only because I remember the savings were $500,000 or more a year on the west side. So I think before we tell the board everything's good, we need to know what does transportation say will be the cost? Is there gonna be a big differential or not?
I have spoken to Artie, and he is acceptable at this point to go
Go east?
east before
Okay, good.
west.
But don't we have the money or close to it all to build both? Because they're both in the capital work plan, correct?
One's in the work plan so far.
Oh.
Budget so far.
Okay. So it would be one versus the other, not both of them simultaneously. How long would it take?
Well, currently that's the plan, right?
Yes.
And it's totally up to you guys what you wanna do, but currently one is funded in the plan, and the idea was that would then become the prototype for the second one.
Mr. Clinch, could that be two concurrent projects?
It could, but then it wouldn't be a
we'd
prototype
have a prototype
situation.
model, yeah.
And part of the beauty of the prototype is when you move forward with it, there is no design that's perfect, but it allows us the opportunity to gain those lessons learned from the first one so that we can apply them to the second. I don't think it's earth-shattering, if we have this tremendous need, but it is a consideration.
Mark, you have the property to be able to go now on the east.
Yes,
We
sir.
don't have the property yet. We're still working through those issues on the
Right.
west.
Correct.
So technically, we don't even have the land for the west yet.
The one east may allow you to do your prototype, just by the time you get everything.
And to board members Bass's point, then it allows that domino to happen on the east side of the county, where once we build the new transportation east, we can move them off of Michigan, move maintenance onto Michigan, and free up the current maintenance facility on 10th and Virginia.
Yeah, I concur because we don't even have land in the west yet. I mean, we have a potential possibility, but it's not for sure. And we know what we have on the east side of town, and so and plus we already planned for it too. So it's not like, we're just magically saying, oh, let's build the plant on the east side. It was always a part of the long-term plan to have an east side transportation facility. And then the other question I have is on the west side. I saw the due diligence expiration is October 31st. Are we gonna get word from South Florida Water Management if they're gonna allow us to use the easement? Because I know there's the easement and then there's South Florida Water Management giving you development permission. But I remember there was no access road to get in there, and we had to go through South Florida Water Management, and I believe Toho was the other one. You had two easements. Will we get answers from both of those that are we gonna be allowed to use that easement before the due diligence expires?
So, we're looking at 5 access options for Avenue A. And the one with South Florida and Army Corps, we've kind of pushed it down because we were looking at 14 months to get through them. And we have 2 other more viable options that we're trying to pursue right now, that would allow us a better access, and a shorter time frame and at a lesser cost.
But the only problem is, whatever answer we have, will it be within the due diligence expiration? Because after that, I think you lose your deposit. If we come back there and find out that we don't have access to the property, our deposit is at risk.
To my understanding, access was part of the deal when we started with the owner. So we would do an extension of the agreement because the owner understands if we don't have access, we're not going to move forward.
Well, I like to do things in black and white. If we can have some kind of drafted amendment for the board to look at, because we are getting to that diligence period and money is on the table, I don't like
We're
to,
not gonna go beyond the due diligence period and forfeit anything
Right.
if there's any doubt. I know
Okay.
that right now. And if we're not done by then, we're gonna either kill the deal or do an amendment.
Right.
I'm very
Yeah.
sticky.
and I don't mind doing
So
an
we would
amendment,
bring-
but I'm just saying, that's
Right.
pretty important. If we can't even get access to the property, who cares if you can develop it?
Right.
We would have to bring the amendment on the October 19th school board meeting to stay in compliance. So we have a little bit of time We're expecting an answer on one of the access by the first of next week, and then if not, we would move forward with an amendment.
But that is an excellent point, Mr. Melendez. We understand the urgency of working through these various options
Right.
to get in before the October 31st.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That was my main concern.
Can we go back to the Mr. Bass's previous request, which, I mean, super open to it, and I understand where you're coming from, makes complete sense. But I just wanna make sure, we are going to talk to transportation before we change directions, right? Is that the consensus, or,
So I have spoken to Arby,
okay,
within the last week, and
so
he
there's
is,
no,
yes. He's reached the point that the east has now caught up at a rate that he no longer has that west must come first. Now he understands with the delays, but I can reconfirm that and send that out to everybody.
if you're confident and the rest
Follow
of
up.
the board,
And reconfirm it with the superintendent.
yeah.
Absolutely.
One of my concerns, there's a lot of development that's going on Nolte Road. There's some large purchases, and I know how fast these guys can build homes. And Hickory Tree Road, that's all coming out of the ground. The pressure on Michigan Avenue, because I don't think they have, Michigan Avenue's not scheduled for widening anytime soon that I know of.
There's an improvement that is currently being
Working its way.
finalized. And in fact, when we completed the Michigan Ave St. Cloud Middle School, we had to coordinate our efforts with that roadway improvement project.
Oh, okay. So,
It wasn't, I wouldn't call it a substantial improvement to, significantly increase the amount of trip generation, but they did do somewhat of an improvement project already. That was just recently completed.
gotcha. Okay.
And how far behind would the next development be? So how far, so we do, let's say we have consensus, there seems to be no negative consequences to doing this, we've all confirmed, we've talked to our superintendent, we're good to go. How far behind do we think, because I know we don't technically have the property yet, would it be for the Knightsbridge property to be developed? I guess that's my question, because with both sides both sides are very congested, so when are we expecting?
And I'm sorry, this is going back to the Knightsbridge K-8
Yes.
property? Oh, okay.
So,
So,
sorry, that's what I'm looking at, I meant Transportation West.
oh, okay.
How much does it sweat out there in
Yes.
West to do it? I have to do these
So
first.
do we have the funding?
Well, yeah, we have the funding in place for the one, so we would transfer the funds that were allocated for west to east for the construction. But as far as now reseeding for the transportation west, I'm going to defer to Ms. Graber on how the timing for that.
Yeah, so our original strategy was to use the quarter penny sales tax through the end of 2025 that we know we're assured to have it, to fund all of the transportation needs that we can. We obviously don't have enough dollars in the bank today to do both of these, but I would recommend is that if we wanna get these done in a sooner time period, that we go ahead and use some of our ad valorem dollars. We have other capital dollars that could be used for this, so that's up to the board, but that would be my recommendation, that we wouldn't wanna wait to see if we have other sales tax dollars flowing in the future. We would just wanna go ahead and allocate other capital dollars for this purpose.
And if memory serves me correctly, that was one of the driving forces to sell the two properties, as the money was gonna be put toward the cost of the two transportation facilities.
And the thing is, they don't have to be concurrent. I mean, to a degree, like you said, we could finish east, spend some money on the west, like doing the civil engineering site plans and whatever, just don't start breaking ground until after the first one is finished. And like you said, now it's a complete prototype. So there's a little bit of a delay. So they don't have to be like concurrently, So I think there's some flexibility.
Yeah, so we'd be looking at 14 months for the design. We try to complete that sooner pending the permitting timeline. But then we're looking at about 12 months to actually construct the facility.
Okay.
So, the preferred would be to be able to complete one, to construct it or nearly construct it, so that we can gain those lessons learned. But again, that's not a driver,
So
that's
that would
just a
be-
preferred.
East would take 14 months, start to finish,
The
Or-
14 months for design and then
14
12
months for
months for
design.
construction.
2 years. So Wes is gonna be waiting 2 years to
If,
get,
if we wait
okay,
to gain those lessons learned, we could do the designs concurrently. We could stagger so that we complete the design for the one, put it into construction, and then do the design as the east is going into construction.
Mark, how would you do it? You know more than any of us sitting up here.
I
Seriously, how
mean,
would you do it?
if I had my preference, I would want to nearly construct the first prior, but we don't have that luxury of waiting that long for the west. So that being the case, then the next best thing would be to design the first, put it into construction, and as we put the first into construction, then we look at the design, the prototype reuse for the second facility.
Now, what is it, and I hear a question here for the attorney, so I echo it too. Why would it take 14 months for design? That sounds,
Because of the permitting timeline.
oh, it's not just the designing the architecture,
Correct.
it's going back and forth
Correct.
again.
That's the delay.
Chairman, I need to clarify something. I actually misspoke. I forgot that we had added this in for the
That's what I
board
thought it
approved
was in
budget.
there.
We have included, it's not in the current year's budget, but in the 5-year plan, we have gone ahead and allocated the dollars for the second transportation facility out of ad valorem dollars. So that is in the 5-year plan.
They're about 2 years apart, which is what we're thinking. So Sarah, could we move it up 1 year if we had to, or it would have to stay in 23, 24 to do what Mark's recommending? Can we one
Would
off
we have enough dollars to move it up
just by 1 year?
and everything else? Or we shifted some other things around potentially. We would have to shift
look
some
at
other
it.
things around though.
Mr. Clinch, understanding your preference, if they are built concurrently, what are the lost efficiencies in having a prototype complete before you? Is it financial, and to what degree, or what number is that financial difference? Or
That's a very difficult question to answer because it depends on the variables that come up as a result of that design. For the structure itself is really where we get those lessons learned. The site is going to be adapted at each location. They're going to be totally different site civil designs, so that part really doesn't matter. It's the building efficiencies that we can gain with the lessons learned.
so if they're staggered, let's say 6 months apart, so that as you're building here, you're constantly fixing the prototype on paper,
Yes, sir.
would that be sufficient?
That would be the next best thing. Yes, sir.
But
The next best thing to having a project one completely constructed, so that we can gain all the lessons learned, so that when we're incorporating the lessons learned as the construction evolves for the first facility.
Time and from an operational standpoint, to completely build one, see how it's working and then start. I mean, I think you're gonna have to have some overlap in there. I wouldn't do it, day one, they break ground together. But you get that 1 year lag time between the two or whatever it is, 9 months, may be the best we can live with.
And
Because I think we need them sooner than later.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Mr. Chairman, because there's those other lessons learned that come from the operation of the facility. Where our stakeholder, transportation, may dictate certain things in that design, but then as it's completed and operational, they may say, wow, there are things that we could have done better.
And I'm
Let's
assuming
do
Mr.
that.
Creech is going around the state to people who have built some of these in the last year or 2 or 3 and saying what's working and what would you never do again?
Right.
So,
And that's part of,
Mr. Shatera, do you?
Arby would like to build both of them at the same time if you possibly could. Remember, we're spending a lot of money hauling buses back because the Horizon space, we can change light bulbs. We have to take every bus back every 30 days to Simpson Road for inspection.
Mhm.
I mean, if you have the money, And I will say this, Harvey's very diligent, he has looked at several, we just visited Orange County. We think the lessons will be there, and we'll be helping facilities see as much as possible. I have to agree with Mr. Clinch, it would be great to do one, work out the bugs with the second one, but honestly, the amount of money that we're spending, transporting and deadhead miles, and we are making a 100 bus purchase, so we'd be able to staff them. Staffing would be the only difference. We're basically splitting up the staff at Simpson Road with a few more additions possible.
And also keep in mind too, when we put the design RFQ out, we're trying to attract those design firms that have constructed these transportation facilities across the state.
I was gonna say, I'm almost willing, because of that, to give you a little bit of a travel budget and like visit it, because I know what you're saying, because sometimes you don't know until you build it, because what's in your head and you design on paper, and you physically get there, the way you use the space is different than you thought. You know, why are we designing from scratch? You know, why can't we just look at prototypes that already exist? And I'm willing to give you guys like a little bit of a travel budget to physically walk through, yeah.
To approve
Good
that.
idea.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, because I'm talking about, because it may not just be Orange County, you know, if you need to go down to Miami, if you need to go to Jacksonville, you guys physically walk it, and the transportation department can be there and say, okay, is this exactly what we want, instead of just creating the perfect, you know, thing out of the, you know, gear.
Yes, sir, that's an excellent suggestion.
I think it sounds like our preference would be to have them both built at the same. Huh? As fast as you can. I mean, I think we're all getting the pressure, you know, from everything that's going on with transportation, so I don't know that we have too much appetite. I don't have an appetite to wait 2 years for Transportation West to be built. So if there is any way that it can be built faster, I hate to make such changes without our superintendent being here. However, I sounds like there's enough support and information to maybe give the direction.
I think you've got kind of a consensus.
Okay,
You know,
Full steam ahead.
we meet with Dr. Pace routinely,
yeah,
and that was the discussion, the last discussion we had when this
Well, I
item
think
came
you're
up.
gonna,
But certainly, we will re-huddle with Dr. Pace to ensure that
but the good thing is you're gonna get a natural stagger anyway, because we don't own west. Just get started on east as fast as possible, and you're gonna get, they're gonna be semi-concurrent, so you'll learn some mistakes from east as you get to west regardless.
yes.
I think you have what you need on this, Mr. Clinch.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
let's
Chairman.
move- let's
And we
move
will
on so
make
we
sure
can-
that Dr. Pace is
It's
on
5
board
o'clock,
as we
so
move forward.
let's,
Okay.
kind of get through this as we can.
Yeah, the last two items, both have to do with acquisition. One is, we are looking for a relief school for Florida Ridge, K-8, 20, plus 26 acres. Unfortunately, because of the boundaries, which is really Osceola Parkway to the north, Point Siena to the south, 417 on the west, Dyer on the east, a little bit west of Dyer. It's a tough area to find a contiguous parcel of 26 acres at a price that's palatable, because we're competing with multifamily developers and tourist commercial developers, and it's very expensive. And so we're looking, and we've been looking, and we've found a few things, but they've been a little too expensive. So we will continue to look. We've placed multiple calls to multiple owners, and so that'll come along, and we'll continue to update you as we go through that.
Rhonda, our biggest strength is that the board is connected to our community. Could you give the board a list of the areas we're looking in?
Yes,
So they
that's,
know,
It's in,
it's in here.
well, separately send it to them so they know, they can start looking and talking to people and help us.
That's a great idea.
Is Knightsbridge, is that part of that population though? When Knightsbridge K goes up, is that gonna help alleviate the population there?
Knightsbridge is gonna primarily provide relief to, the balance of West Side, and it sits in the middle of Sunrise and Horizon zone. So it's gonna give the relief that we need for Sunrise and Horizon for them to start taking a lot of that infill between Pleasant Hill Road and Ham Brown Road.
And then the last point that we wanted to discuss, we did go ahead and in the spirit of knowing that that you will need future sites as we go along, especially in a county that's growing so rapidly, with a demographic that is geared towards families. We did go through and take all the data from the property appraiser and pull out all the 20 to 55 to 60 acre properties that are owned by one owner in the county. And so our next step is to kind of cull through that data. We've already done some of it. We've removed all the jurisdictionally owned properties, and the water management district properties, and CDDs and HOA and COA properties, and so we have a new list here. This was just a sample in here, but our next step, and this is a larger question for the board and for us to talk through this over time, is how do we approach that? What do we do with this data? Do we want to start identifying areas that are in high growth, work that into the 5-year plan that's redone every fall, and start identifying properties now that will be needed in the future to achieve several things? Number one, to lower your basis on these acquisitions, because obviously it always costs more the minute you need something, right? When you have to run down to the store instead of ordering it 2 months before. And the competition. And so that's what we're coming up against, is we can't react as nimbly as some others. And so you find a property and it's if we don't react, we're losing it. And so maybe taking this and looking out and trying to say, okay, we know that growth is gonna have to be in this area because this is the pocket of usable land and everything around it is wet and there's nothing else left and this is infill, or it will be. And start thinking, more in the future, and ultimately that's really a land banking question. I mean, there's so many other questions involved in that decisions as a board. So, but we wanted to let you know, we did pull that data, and we can cull through it and really narrow it down and put it on a map and make it very visual so we can see it. But we just want to make sure that's the direction you want to go and get some feedback, questions.
No, I like that idea. And because it's a balance too, because, and not just how much do you land bank, but whenever new developments get in, they're dedicating sites to us. That's only if they hit that threshold. So if there's a bunch of development that don't hit that threshold, then this becomes key. We have to do it. So but I like the idea of at least looking into it, and I appreciate you doing that, and we'll just, at least that's into my mind, is determining how much that future development is gonna be large enough to trigger dedication of the site where we don't have to find it, versus little developments here and there that add up, like Narcoossee. Narcoossee knew the magic number, and next thing you know, 1 million houses were built on Narcoossee and we didn't get the land dedicated to us. So. But it's always good to think ahead and mitigate that, because worst case scenario, we get it, then we can always sell it later, And that's just my opinion.
You have much more here? Do you want
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
It's 5 after 5. Can we move through the,
Yes, sir. We will move quickly on the last item.
thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Jason Lindsay to rejoin us at the table? Jason, take it away.
All right. Okay, now we're gonna talk about the 5-year work plan. Just a little history background. You notified staff on September 2nd that the work plan was open for edification. They said they tried to open it in July, typically it's open in September, so we had about
2 weeks.
2 weeks to get the whole report done and to you for approval tonight to meet these October 1st middle deadline to DOE. Real quickly, some general information, the Florida statute 101335 is annually prior to the adoption of the district's budget. Each district shall prepare a tentative district educational facilities plan that includes long-range planning for facilities needs over 5, 10, and 20 years. If you want to open to the work plan, on pages 2 through 7, That is your expenditures. Now, what this work plan is basically taking the 5-year budget that Ms. Graber and her group puts together, reporting it to DOE and telling them what we're gonna do with those funds. So pages 2 through 7 was all done by Ms. Graber and her group. If there's any questions about that, should reflect exactly what you see as far as capital expenditures for new facilities.
The format looks a lot different, but the data and the content is exactly what you all approved in the 5-year capital plan.
Okay, moving forward. The project schedule section in the work plan, which is pages 7 through 8, that consists of all the funded and unfunded capacity projects for the next 5 years. If you go and you look down on the pages 7 through 8, you'll see that we have the K school AA on a mitigated site in Kendrick, which we talked about previously. The KA school site BV, which is the West Side Relief School, that's the South Point Center Boulevard or Knightsbridge site. The KA school CC, which is the mitigated site within Stonebridge development. On pages 8 through 10, this section is created using, it's the other project schedules, and this section is created using information provided by the Maintenance Department's Facilities Condition Assessment, which tells us what major projects need to be done at each school, whether it be an air handling unit, a full chiller replacement, carpeting, flooring, that type of information for each school for the 5-year period. That's where those funds come from. Also included here is the unfunded comprehensive renovation budget numbers, because those kind of go hand in hand. We do a comprehensive renovation, most of the maintenance of dollars will be taken off and put into the comprehensive renovation projects. Moving on to additional project schedules on page 11. This includes projects that are not identified in last year's approved educational plant survey. Now for this, the funded projects are our Neptune Elementary School traffic queuing solution, land purchases, Transportation East facility, which we spoke about earlier, the Gateway High School Comprehensive Renovation Project. There's also some unfunded projects listed there, which is the Reedy Creek Elementary School Comprehensive Renovation and the Osceola County School for the Arts Comprehensive Renovation. That's the construction dollars. Next is the non-funded growth management project schedules. We have nothing reported on this slide. On pages 11 through 18. Is our tracking. Tracking is where we report all the information based on the current year, 5-year projected COPD. We take the COPD that the DOE gives us, break it down per school based on last year's enrollment, and project it out for 5 years. We also report here our relocatable replacement. We track where the charter schools are doing and their enrollment and the capacities. The special purpose classroom tracking. This is where we report co-teach classrooms. We have infrastructure tracking, basically stating that we're building these schools. We may need to do some infrastructure work to get these schools up and running. We have a net new classroom, relocatable student station reporting, and lease. Keep in mind that relocatable student stations is both owned and leased portables. And the next section is the leased facility tracking, which is portables and other. We also have failed standard relocatable tracking, which we have none of to report. Next is the planning section. This is where we're supposed to report class size reduction or school closure planning. And in the 5 to 7 years I've been doing this, we're not closing any schools and we're not reducing class sizes. So I'm pretty sure that'll stay the same no matter when I do this report. And the last section is the long-range planning section. This section is divided into 2 sections. It's 6 through 10 years, and then back further is 11 through 20 years. In that section, you'll see the 10 and 20-year maintenance. Again, those dollar amounts come from, and the 10-year come from unfunded comprehensive renovation projects, and also the facility condition assessment for the 10 years out. And the 20 years, the 20-year dollars is just the facility condition assessment. dollars that maintenance feels that we will need in the 11 to 20 years. 10 and 20-year capacity. Now, there's, just like anything in planning, could change tomorrow, could change yesterday, but at the snapshot, this is what we saw we needed in the 10-year, also in the 20-year. The 10 and 20-year plan utilization, that takes in consideration the schools we're gonna build, all 3 K schools, the student stations for those schools, plus any future unfunded schools we see, and we plug those numbers in, and they're based off of the 10-year COFD or 11-year COFD numbers. And then the 10 and 20-year infrastructure plan, obviously, if we're planning on building a school, there'll be infrastructure needs as well. I know that was a quick run through. Is there any questions about the 5-year work plan? I know it's coming to you tonight for approval, and I would love to have brought it to you earlier, but open September 2nd, we rushed you to meet the DOE deadline.
What changed in the blue sheet item?
Oh, I'm sorry,
How about blue
yes,
sheet?
I apologize, I should have gone through
Fine.
that. Blue sheet item, the first blue sheeted item, the change was the Harmony High School, the space reconfiguration. We changed that number to match what was in the,
On page 12, it's the very last line. We changed 196 to 171.
Okay.
okay, that was the only change on that sheet. Then on page 20, in our oversight, on my oversight, I can't blame anybody else because I did the report. My oversight was I missed the Celebration Island Village School, elementary school and elementary school numbers. So I had to add the numbers into
Okay.
that, the elementary school totals on the 10-year plan utilization. So it went from it went from 5,197 to 6,145.
I just have 2 quick questions, Mr. Chair. And one of them is, now I don't have to pull them at the agenda later, because I saw on the agenda tonight, there was like a bunch of secure lobby, we're refurbishing these. Are the new prototypes adjusting that? Because we don't have to keep, going back and securing
Yes.
lobbies all the time. 'Cause I know,
Yes.
like the Schenkel Schultz, prototype, it was wide open. You go in there, you gotta go all the way to the corner, that's not secure at all. Have we updated those prototypes to make sure that we don't have to keep going back and amending them and spending so much money?
Yes, they do. That includes the Sally Port, the secure lobby, our newest standards.
Okay,
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
offline later, I'll look at it, because I don't wanna take up a lot of time.
And we include them in our comprehensive renovations as well.
Okay, and then my second question really quickly, and it doesn't have to be answered now, it can be answered later. Because I know that we were talking before, it's gonna be at least $100 million to build new high schools. We got some potentials, the Hopper and they're going. Do we have to look at maybe looking at the population count? Instead of saying 2,500 or 3,000 students, are we looking at maybe the possibility of designing maybe a smaller high school? So that way it doesn't have to cost us so much money to build a high school. And I'm just theoretically bringing it up there, is that something that we've considered, is maybe smaller high schools?
So they are attendance driven, based on some quick numbers that we're starting to see flow in before we do the fall update for our long-term range planning. We do see the possibility of the next 2 high schools coming in line closer together and maybe at a smaller number, but built with the intention of ghost wings. So then as the population continues to grow, we could go back and add those wings. But we do see those coming maybe in at a smaller number, like 1,900, and then closer together in time, instead of like every 10 years, they might almost be like maybe 2-3 years apart.
Because I understand financially, we have to have a break-even point, because you get so much FTE per student.
Yes.
So I don't want to reduce it so much to save money on one, but then hurt money on operations.
Right.
But what is that break-even point for operations? And I'll discuss that later to figure out. And I love that idea of phasing it, maybe building the foundation of it, then maybe a couple of years from now, if it's too populated, then build a wing. Because I just got really scared when I saw the $100 million numbers, the minimum to build a high school.
And in fact, that's what we did at Liberty High School. We built 2 of the 3 classroom buildings. There is a 3rd classroom building that can be added in the future.
Right, for the added capacity. Okay,
Get yours?
yes, I'm good.
Board, anyone else? Thank you very much. Excellent on all accounts. We will adjourn the workshop and reconvene at about 12 minutes. Regular workshop.
They'll take care of it. Yeah. Yeah, on podium.